Hello and welcome back to the educational webinar series brought to you by WeatherWorks. My name is Nathan Wiles, lead meteorologist and assistant marketing director of the company. Today we will be touching on some of WeatherWorks products and services that are available throughout the winter season to help guide your business before, during, and after the storm. Our presenter today is WeatherWorks' own senior meteorologist and director of Meteorological Services, Rob Reale. Rob will be reviewing some of the account features and basic setups and presenting us with an insight of some of the new WeatherWorks features scheduled for release this upcoming winter. In all, the webinar will take around 30 minutes of time and will be followed by a short question and answer session. Feel free to comment or ask anything in the question panel on the right-hand side of your screen throughout the duration of the webinar, and we will review some of your questions at the end of this session. Rob, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Nate. Well, let's get started. And in this session, as Nate alluded to, we'll do a quick WeatherWorks and winter bootcamp covering everything that you need to know and be prepared for the upcoming season with WeatherWorks. We'll focus on how to make the most of the services that you're already receiving or are potentially interested in. And towards the end, we'll review some exciting new features for this upcoming winter, including app enhancements, a brand new refreeze product, along with a few other items. So WeatherWorks has been established since 1986. That's nearly 35 years serving the snow and ice industry. You'll probably recognize the name Frank Lombardo. He is the president and founder of the company and is very prominent in this industry. We're located in Northwest New Jersey, in Hackettstown, New Jersey, but we service clients across the entire continental US. Over the years, we've grown pretty significantly to a staff of over 30 plus meteorologists who have a combined 200 plus years of winter experience. So needless to say, we've seen a snowflake or two and a winter storm or two. Our overall mission day in and day out is to be the best at interpreting and communicating client-specific weather data. What does that mean? Well, the interpreting of the weather data would be interpreting satellite, radar data, model data correctly to, in the end, make the most accurate forecast possible. So that's the interpreting part of it. But that can only be used so much if it's not communicated properly. So yes, it's great to have an accurate forecast, but it also needs to be communicated in language that will help with the decision making in the end. So in the end, really what matters is that you, the clientele, makes the appropriate decision. In the wintertime, is it, do I pre-treat or not? Is this going to be a salting or a plowing event? Should I send my crews out at 2 a.m. or 5 a.m. to save those extra couple hours of manpower? So yes, we strive to be the best at interpreting weather data to make an accurate forecast, and we strive to be the best at communicating that data, whether it's via our forecast or our phone consultation if you call in for a weather briefing. Now, what we're going to do through this webinar is go through various services that we offer, talk about the ins and outs of each of those, also how to set some stuff up since it is kind of pre-season and just a month or two away from seeing our first snowflakes. So we're going to start with a few products that you would use ahead of the winter season, which would be right now, which includes Longrange Forecasts and Snowtistics. We will get a sneak peek at the Longrange Forecast that will be published either today or tomorrow, but we'll get a little sneak peek ahead of the scenes today. Then we'll dive into ahead of and during the storm, talking about those storm alerts, those forecasts that you're very accustomed to, the heads up notification, and the phone consultation, and make sure that you're all set up with each of those headed into the winter season. And then, of course, we can't forget about post-storm. That's where certified snowfall totals come into play. Past weather reports and data requests are also something I want to touch on because they can be very valuable and may or may not be something that you're aware of. And then we'll also dive into, just briefly, touch on the new refreeze certification product that will be launching this winter as well. So as I mentioned, we'll start with ahead of the season. We'll start with some long-range forecasts, and particularly the winter risk product, which is involved and kind of intertwined within our long-range offerings. So who, how, when do you get these long-range forecasts? They're included with all storm alert clients. So basically, if you're receiving winter forecasts from us, whether it's the dailies or the alerts, you'll get these long-range outlooks. We sent our first preview about a month ago in August. We'll be sending our next winter preview in a day or two, highlighting some initial thoughts, and we'll send out our final actual winter forecast, our official forecast, in about a month from now in October. That's largely what the long range product entails as far as what's included with your regular package. We do update some blogs on the weather webpage as well. But if you're looking for a more in-depth, continual updated mid to long range updates throughout the winter season, that's where Winter Risk comes into play. And that's an additional package added on for $325 per season. These are updated. Winter Risk is 2 to 3 times per week. And we focus on upcoming storms in that kind of 6 to 14 day period. We continually look at weeks 3 to 4, and we continue to break down the upcoming monthly outlooks. Here's what Winter Risk looks like. If you haven't seen it before, or you're potentially interested in it, you can get to it through our weather webpage, or you can go to winterriskservice.com. It's broken down in a couple different tabs. You'll see on the top days 1 to 5, days 6 to 14, weeks 3 to 4, and monthly outlooks. And currently we have highlighted days 6 to 14. And here's kind of a sneak peek of what the content might look like. And if you clicked on one of these, you'll see a lot more details about the potential storm that's 6 or 7 days out that may or may not be hyped out on the media. You'll get some non-sensationalized forecast that can really help you plan out for that day 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever it is, snowstorm or even snow shower event that's on the horizon. And it comes with a lot of great things. We include images that kind of show you rain snow lines as well as timing. For instance here, maybe planning out your weekend with this Friday to Saturday storm. Lots of text and details of what to expect. And in some of the bigger storms, we even provide an outlook of if we think this is going to be more of a salting, plowing, or significant event for various regions throughout the Northeast. I'm excited to announce that this year as well, this will be offered in the Midwest for portions of Chicago, Indianapolis area, Ohio, parts of Michigan as well. So Winter Risk Midwest is a thing this year. The last thing I want to talk about before we continue to move on would be the days 1 to 5 portion of Winter Risk. That is included with your Storm Alert package. So anyone who gets a forecast from us otherwise can also go into Winter Risk each day during the winter season, Monday through Friday, and that will be updated, providing an overview of the next 5 days. But again, if you want that 6 days and beyond, that's where it's an upgraded package within Winter Risk. So I mentioned before, we're going to do a sneak peek at the winter preview, which you should be seeing in your inbox either today or tomorrow. Before we get there, let's touch on last winter, but there's really not much to say. Last year was obviously a lean year, period. That's really all that you need to say. But I want to do a quick little climatology of lean years. And this is something that we did in our webinar back in May. We discussed lean year climatology and what that might mean for the year following it. So what we did was we looked at the last 50 years of data for a whole bunch of locations throughout the region. And then we looked at the year following that, and we made a climatology out of it. And what we saw was 93% of the time, the year following a lean winter, snowfall increases, sometimes by a little bit, sometimes by a lot, but it at least gets better or more snow following that the majority of the time. Now, next we said, okay, fine. How often do we get close to or above average? And that's what this at least 3/4 of average is supposed to mean. So for instance, if you averaged 40 inches of snowfall in a given year, 3/4 of average means you at least see 30 plus inches of that. So kind of near to above normal. And that happens at about 71% of the time, which is pretty promising as well if you're looking for more snow. To actually exceed average, that's a little bit more like a coin flip. So again, this data is strictly climatology. It has nothing to do with the forecast. It just gives you a little bit of a background of how likely it is to see more snow or less snow following a lean winter like we saw last year. Now, to dive into our actual initial outlook, I'm sure your eyes will be drawn to the image there that's showing the above average versus below average confidence. Before we talk about that, overall, we're expecting a relatively mild winter, or at least temperatures to average over the course of the winter a bit above normal. That's not to say that you can't see snow. In fact, the majority of the last 10 or 20 winters have actually been above normal in terms of temperature, and most of them have actually been above normal in terms of snowfall as well. So just because you're warm does not equal no snow. It just likely means that it won't be, thought of as a bitter, record cold kind of winter with Arctic blast after Arctic blast. We'll see our cold shots, but we'll also see our relatively mild shots. Now, what we do tend to favor this upcoming winter because of that is a higher chance to the north to see above normal snow, or at least near to above normal snow. And as you go further south, it will be a little trickier to get above normal snow. And that's where you can see the blues as you head to New England and some of the RNGs as you head to the mid-Atlantic. The other thing I want to point out, though, is with marginal temperatures expected in quite a few storms this winter, we've highlighted sort of an enhanced and moderate risk for wintry mixes this year. And as you can kind of see, along the northwest of 95, we'll have an enhanced threat for wintry mixes. And we've seen that quite a bit over the last couple of years, and there's really no reason to not expect the same this winter, which does beg the question, as you set up these contracts with your clients this year, are you covered for just snow, or do you have any ice clauses in there? What about sleet? How do you account for those in those contracts? We'll talk about that in just a second, and we'll also mention that later on in the presentation as well, as just a couple quick tips of how you can account for snowfall in a contract, as well as ice, as well as potentially sleet, those wintry mixed events, which again, we are expecting a higher than normal threat for them this winter. And that ties into Snowtistics pretty well. This is basically a snowfall climatology report that you can obtain for any location across the entire US. This includes raw snowfall data, averages, extremes, variability. You can look at trends and so much more. There's a lot of powerful data on here, particularly if you're looking at a new site, making a new bid. Maybe you're starting to manage snow in a new area. Maybe you're taking over a new job as a facility manager. Whatever it is, these snowfall climatology reports can be very powerful with a lot of data. They're available in 5, 10, 15, in some cases even 30 years back worth of data. And they're really crucial when pricing out contracts and planning for the upcoming season. In May, we did a whole webinar that included linear climatology, and it went through how to set up contracts and some weather-related things and snowfall climatology-related things that you should consider. A couple of the quick bullet points as a quick refresher from that webinar. Most winters aren't average. When we look at any given site and we look at 30 years worth of data, typically it's only once every 4 to 5 years does a winter end up average. So be careful if you're building your business model around the norm, because year to year, there's a pretty good chance that it will be above or below normal. And again, only about a quarter of the time does it actually fit within that range of normal. And also, that kind of ties into how snowfall amounts can and do significantly vary from season to season. So if you're a snow and ice contractor, you may want to consider balancing your contracts and overall portfolio to ensure more consistent profitability. The next point is, okay, since things kind of are volatile from year to year, things become kind of more smooth and stability will increase over the long run. So if you're planning your business out for the next 3 or 5 years, or you're a facility manager and trying to price things out for the next 3 or 5 years, it'll be much easier to do so, and oftentimes will end up about average if you're looking at over the long run, versus year to year, you'll see a lot of fluctuations, but the longer out you go, the more stable it will be. So those were a couple of the main takeaways from our May webinar, and those are some of the things that a Snowtistics report can help you with and help you determine. Cool, so that was ahead of the season, basically where we're at right now, all things that can be very helpful for your planning and budgeting for the next coming months. Now let's dive into the storm alert side of things ahead of the storm and during the storm. And the first thing I want to go over is our winter alert forecast, and just go over a few of the sections that you'll find within this template. So the first thing that we'll talk about is the discussion on top. And to me, this is potentially the most useful part of the entire forecast, because it allows us to tie in that interpretation and communication of weather data and kind of blur it together to help you make those critical decisions. It allows us to not only talk about the weather, but talk about the operational impacts, talk about variability, talk about some forecaster insight. So if you don't read that all the time, I highly encourage you to do so. Now, the next section is the storm overview, which I'm guessing most of you find the most useful. That has the start time, the end time, the totals, and the snow confidence. Now, I will point out that the snowfall is meant for official measuring surfaces, which are technically a bunch of whiteboards, what snowfall would amount to on a whiteboard, which is pretty much equivalent to a car top, a grass, somewhat of a colder surface. So in the past, of course, we've always referenced, hey, totals will be a little bit less on pavements, or pavements will just be wet, or whatever. We've made those distinctions. But one thing that we're going to add this year, which I think you'll find very helpful, is just below this will be a pavement details section, where we'll have specific pavement totals, as well as the timing of the expected first inch on pavements and any additional comments that are necessary as well. So I do think this will be very valuable when planning out your upcoming winter storm or even during the winter storm. And one thing I do want to point out about pavement forecasting of those totals, the reason why we do CSTs based on standard measuring surfaces, and really the preferred way from a meteorological standpoint is to forecast totals on an official measuring surface, like a whiteboard, a car top, things like that, is that that surface is going to basically behave the same regardless of where it is, whether it's kind of in the sun, whether it's shaded, whether it's in a parking lot, whether it's close to a road. It should act relatively the same. On the other hand, pavements are extremely variable, especially in those marginal events near 32 degrees. A major highway will interact differently with the snow as opposed to a side road, as opposed to a parking lot, as opposed to a sidewalk, as opposed to pavers. Additionally, the amount of traffic on those will affect it. Whether it was pre-treated or not will affect it. Whether it was exposed to sunlight or in the shade will affect those pavement totals. So we'll do our best to give accurate pavement totals, and we'll comment out the variations as necessary, but just understand that that's kind of the difficulty that goes into pavement total forecasting. Continuing on with the form, below that is the hazard, where we break down some of the main impacts from ice, the snowfall rate, down trees and power lines, blowing and drifting when applicable. And then below that is the periods, which will get into the more specifics of the weather each day and night, any accumulation and or ice or refreeze amounts, temperature and wind, which may have drying or blowing or freeze up considerations. So all that info can be found in this form. So I really do think it's a one-stop shop for all the information you're going to need to plan out the next 24 to 48 hours ahead of any winter storm, whether it's 1 inch or 10 inches. Let's talk about some questions kind of on the admin side of things. And we'll go into a couple examples of how to set things up and customize these products as well. So the first question is, hey, when do I receive these forecasts? Most of you will either fall under the alert only category or the daily clients, which means they get daily forecasts and alerts. The only difference is the alert clients will only start receiving forecasts at about 48 hours or so within an upcoming snow event. So if it's active, you're going to pretty much get them every day. But if it's going to be quiet for the next couple of days, you may or may not receive a forecast that will only start within 48 hours or so of the next event. The daily clients are going to receive a forecast every single day of the week, Monday through Friday, regardless of whether there is or is not a wintry threat. It can be nice for record keeping. It could be nice because we'll talk about refreeze if there's some melt refreeze cycles on those sunny days and cold nights. If you're interested, you're an alert client that is potentially interested in upgrading to a daily forecast every single day. It's only a few $100s more, so it's not a lot to add that on. Now, how are the forecasts delivered? You can get them through the app, you can get them through the email, or you can get them through the fax. All are perfectly acceptable methods, or even combinations of multiple ones are acceptable to be delivered. Up to 10 individual contacts per forecast region can receive a forecast. If you have more people, just reach out to us. We can add more via request. And yes, you can customize when and who receives these forecasts. You can choose to receive them 24/7, certain days of the week versus the weekend, only get those alert forms versus the daily forms. There is some customization, which I'll show you in a little bit as well, that you can do from contact to contact. Now, as far as the heads ups, again, those are the call to actions that we look to give 1 to 2 hours of lead time for any incoming accumulating snow or ice. So that's where we can call, text, or send a message through the app. Note, snow showers may be slightly less lead time because they tend to be more localized, like a thunderstorm. Sometimes they're almost popping up over the area, but we shoot to still give at least a half hour of lead time for those snow showers, which I do really feel like these heads ups are very valuable. For those bigger snowstorms, it's really like a verification that things are going well, and you know that you have about an hour or two if you want to still mobilize ahead of the storm. And then at night, you don't have to worry about waking up to a coating of snow on your parking lot, or you don't have to worry about sitting up and watching the radar for snow showers all night. We'll do that because we're staffed 24/7, always monitoring that for you. And again, you can receive this through the app, through a call, or the text, but by far at this point, text and app are the recommended methods to get these heads ups because it allows more contacts to do so, and it's much easier to provide more frequent in-storm updates. And we continue to add more features to the app. We'll talk about that at the end of this session, but there'll be continued more features and more features over the years to come. So app is really the way I would suggest headed towards, maybe for this winter and certainly in the future. Who can receive heads ups? Just like the forecast contacts, if you're a text or an app, settings for the heads ups, up to 10 contacts can receive that per region, and we can add on more if necessary. Calls, it's really only up to 1 or 2 people at max. Can you customize when to receive the heads ups? Yes, you can. You can choose to receive them 24/7. You can just get them during the day, during the evening, during the night, or any combination of those. And yeah, you might be at your point in your career where you're saying, hey, I don't want to be bothered at night. That's, these news guys' problem to deal with. By all means, you can change that at the contact level. Lastly, in the storm alert section is the consultation. When can you call? 24/7. We're always here to answer your questions with a knowledgeable meteorologist, whether it's a critical decision or in the middle of a snowstorm or trying to prep a barbecue for a holiday or whatever. We'll always be there to answer your questions. Who can call for consultation? There's up to 2 appointed consultation contacts within the admin that you can set up. About a year ago, if you've called in, you probably realized that we changed the system a little bit, and we have a number. I don't have it listed here, but if you don't know it, let us know, and we'll give you the direct briefing line that will get you directly through to a meteorologist. Our average wait time, we have statistics on this, is under 20 seconds, which basically means you call, you hear a couple rings, immediately you're getting into that briefing. And no, there is not a limit to the consultation. We are always here to help. Now, as far as the admin side of things, how do you set the contacts up and what are some of the different features? So what you'll want to do that, and I really encourage you to do that now or the next month or so, set up all these contacts, get everything prepped, because it's a lot easier to do that now than in the middle of the snowstorm come December or January. And what you want to do is you want to go to weatherworksinc.com, sign in with your username and password, and then you'll see a page like you see on the left here. And what you can do is click on forecast contacts, heads up contacts, consultation contacts. You can add new people, and then you can customize it on a contact level. And you see here, for example, certain people receive forecasts at all the times, and then these red X's signify that they wanted to customize it and not receive it at certain times. So it's pretty easy to do, but if you have any struggles whatsoever, give us a call. We'll be more than happy to walk you through it or do it for you. All right, that covers the ahead and during the storm. Let's wrap things up with the post-storm and then dive into a couple of new features that we'll be launching for this upcoming winter season. But before we do that, yes, we'll talk about the certified snowfall totals and some past weather reports. CSTs, I have to imagine that everyone on here is familiar with it, but as a quick refresher, if you're not, it is a third-party snow and ice verification service. WeatherWorks is the third party. Snowfall is measured to the nearest 1/10 of an inch, ice accretion to the nearest 100th of an inch. It comes with a complete narrative description of the winter event, including start times, critical periods, end times, what they're blowing and drifting, all that stuff. And there's a certification statement by our meteorologist. We are considered the nation's leader in snow and ice verification and universally accepted by contractors and property managers. The reason we are considered the nation's leader is that we are the most thorough and the most scientifically backed provider of certified snowfall totals. And really, we have a staff of over 30-degree meteorologists, and we need that to be able to cover the 50 states worth of data, because our process is that we go through satellites, radar, airport observations, a whole bunch of different snowfall observations from government side of things, public side of things, private WeatherWorks spotters. All are ingested and then quality controlled. And one of the big differences that you'll see is that we're going to go through every single snowfall total and make sure that it's accurate. Just because the news station published some total, or even the National Weather Service publishes a total, does not necessarily mean it was representative of the whole storm. Many times we see totals that are issued that aren't complete. They're taken with a few hours of snow left to go, which obviously would mean that it would be under representative how much actually fell. Or sometimes it's taken at the end of the storm, but towards the end, snow flipped over to rain and added all this wetness and compaction. Or a lot of times, one of the biggest things that we see is that snowfall observers commonly wake up at about 7 or 8 a.m. They go outside and measure the snow, but what happens when snow ended 8 or 10 hours earlier in the middle of the night, there's a whole big window of where it stopped snowing when the snowfall was actually measured. On the contrary, sometimes people measure in snow drifts. Sometimes people just want to see their name on the news, so they kind of fake a high total. So what we're going to do is quality control all of that data, add in radar, add in airport ground observations, and then we'll give a specific accurate snowfall total. And we've published over 400,000 totals last year alone in nearly 20,000 zip codes. We published near millions of totals over the last decade. And with all of that, with a 0.1 discrepancy rate, which basically means that our totals are very accurate. We have very, very, very few disputes and times that we need to change a total. Now, from an admin point of things, how are we going to renew locations? How do we set some things up? Here's a quick little briefer on that. One of the things you may notice, if you haven't done so yet this year, is if you sign into Certified Snowfall Totals, or you go to your weather web page at weatherworksinc.com and go to Certified Snowfall Totals, if you see this red bar on top that says the renewal period has started, click here to renew now, it means that you have not updated your Certified Snowfall Totals locations. You may have already paid, especially if you're a Storm Alert client, you may have re-upped that contract. But just because you've done that, we don't assume that you want the exact same locations as last year. You may want them, you may not. We don't want to make that assumption. So what you'll have to do is you'll go into here. You can start the process. It's very easy. You can choose to keep all the same locations as last year. You can choose some of them, add new ones, add more on top of that, whatever you need to do. And if you've already paid for your storm alerts, you might notice that you'll have some credits. That basically means the CSTs are already paid for. You just need to actually select the locations that you want going forward. Or if you don't have credits, you'll have to buy them in addition to the ones that you already have. So I would encourage you to start doing this and get the ball rolling now, again, as opposed to waiting until after the first snowstorm of the year when you want that stuff immediately. It's much easier if you set it up now. The swap date for any locations, let's say you set some stuff up now, and then November 20th, you have a new bid and a new area that you're covering, and you want to swap a CST location out. It's not a problem as long as it's before November 30th. After that point, they're basically set in stone. You'd have to add on locations as opposed to swapping locations. A few other features within the CST program that you may or may not be aware of. If you look kind of, in this top header here where it says storms, cumulative, thresholds, report lookup, and so on and so forth. Under cumulatives, you can see monthly breakdowns of each of your locations as well as seasonal totals. If you expand on that a little bit, it even gives breakdowns by event and some other nice looking graphs down there. Thresholds, which I don't have shown, but you can see where the arrow would point and that's where you would click, can be a really great tool, especially if your contracts have caps in them. You can choose the CST location, the amount of snow that the cap will hit, and the contacts to be notified when a threshold's been met. So let's say your cap's 50 inches. Once the CST program calculates that you've exceeded 50 inches, automatically you'll get an email saying, hey, your threshold's been hit. And then at that point, you can do whatever it is you need to do from a billing and contract standpoint. Lastly, and speaking of getting notified after an event or a threshold's been met, how do you get notified after that 24 to 48 hour period after it snows? Once the CST has been published, how do you get notified? To set that up, you go to Accounts over here on the right, click Email Notifications, and then you can add up to 4 contacts. So right when the storm gets published, boom, you'll know it, and then you can print the invoices, send them out, get paid, whatever it is that you need to do. That'll automatically happen for you immediately anytime a CST is published. All right. The last thing we'll touch on before we go to the new features and wrap this thing up is the past weather reports and data requests. And our team of expert meteorologists are capable of producing a whole lot of different special requests that may come in. That includes Snowtistics, like we talked about before, a certified past weather report, maybe there's a slip and fall claim, a seasonal review, and even a snow/wintry mix equivalency report, which is what you see here highlighted on the right. Again, we talked about in the long range outlook how we are expecting a fair amount of wintry mixed events, especially as you go north and west of 95. We'll just make sure that your contracts are set up so that if you do get a decent amount of ice or sleet, that your work is going to be compensated for, because we all know that a half inch of ice is a lot more difficult than a half inch of snow. And when you add sleet in the mix, it becomes much more dense. It becomes a lot more difficult to remove, to manage, to deal with, all of the above. If you ever need to, we do offer snowfall equivalency reports where we break out the snow amount, the sleet amount, and the ice amount, and we can do an equivalency of how much that roughly would be had it been all snow. It's a good way to demonstrate that there was a lot more work than maybe the 2.5 inches suggests, because there was that ice in addition to it or whatever. So again, these are tools at your disposal. And if one of these things don't meet that your specific need, our team is here to help with whatever it is that you need. We can customize reports. We can get the quality meteorological data to help you with your business and run operations smoothly. Now, last but not least, I want to go through a couple of quick 2020, 2021 updates and features. And we're excited to bring you a lot of new enhancements and even products for this winter. And here's a sneak peek at a few things. We already touched on the forecast alerts with the pavement info in them. That will be starting the first snowfall that you see that's over an inch and you get that alert, you'll see that pavement info in there. We touched on the winter risk is also going to be expanded to the Midwest this year. Next off, we'll talk about that refreeze verification real quick. That is going to live within the Certified Snowfall Totals database, so you'll see it live within that same ecosystem. The plan is to have hourly and pavement temperature verification, snow cover melt during that period, 24-hour precipitation amounts, an event overview, and some graphs depicting critical melt and refreeze times, which might look something like you're seeing below. We're still in the process of finalizing everything, but it is expected to launch around November 1st. And if you have more questions or would like more details about it, certainly feel free to reach out. But I think it's going to be a really nice tool on those typical melt and refreeze days to verify if there was any or was not any. And then the other update that I want to talk about is our app upgrade. I know in the past it's been a fairly basic way to receive our products, but we will add some new enhancements this year. First off, the radar will be more high definition and will have rain and snow depicted on it to help you figure out where those rain snow lines are. The forecast will be more user-friendly and much more modern. So as opposed to just kind of screenshotting what our forecast is that you would get in a PDF handout like you see there, it will be a lot more modernized and with some more features that are more aesthetically pleasing and really much more easier to digest via a phone. We'll have some additional CST features and potentially the addition of winter risk in this app as well. So if you aren't already on the app, I would encourage you to download it, look in your Play Store or your I'm not an Apple guy, but the iStore, whatever it's called, Apple Store, and type in WeatherWorks. You can download the app. You can sync it with your with the admin system. Again, if you have any issues with that, let us know. We'll help with that syncing process. And then you can start receiving these forecasts, these heads ups, and lots of other information through our app. So that wraps it up for me. If you have any questions, certainly feel free to reach out to me personally, Rob Reale at WeatherWorksInc.com. If you have any upgrades or sales inquiries, look at sales@WeatherWorksInc.com. I want to thank you for your time. I hope this was informative, and I think I'll leave the floor to Nate real quick to see if we have any questions.
Yes, thank you, Rob. Great presentation, and I hope everyone found some of this information to be useful. We'll now take the next few moments to review a couple of your questions that we received throughout the webinar. Our first question comes from Terry, and Terry asks, do I need to renew my CST account and locations if I've already renewed my forecast contract?
Yeah, so the answer to that is, and I was touching on it briefly before, was just because you've renewed your alert subscription with us does not automatically guarantee that the CSTs are going to be updated as well. Basically, we don't want to assume that you have the same locations that you had last year. So if you've updated and renewed your alert contract, you will have credits for the CSTs. Sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 10, depending on the amount of alert regions that you receive. All you'll have to do is go to CertifiedSnowfallTotals.com and click a couple buttons, and you can renew those locations or edit those locations very easily. But the answer to that is no, it won't automatically be updated in the CST program because we don't want to assume that you have the same locations as last year.
Great. This next one touches on winter risk, and Greg asks, he currently subscribes to winter risk for his northeast locations. Now, you mentioned this will be offered to the Midwest market. Greg wants to know how he can go about adding this feature.
Yeah, the best way is probably go right to sales@weatherworksinc.com. You'll either get hold of Nate, who just asked the question, or likely Kevin Hopler, and we can set you up with that pretty easily. So that's not a problem whatsoever. So yeah, any questions like that, I would direct towards sales. That'll be the most efficient way to go about it.
All right, one last question and we'll about wrap it up. This actually is more of a data question, but Frank is asking, what historic precipitation data does WeatherWorks provide? And he might be referring more so to, do we have other products not just related to snow?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know we touched a lot on snow since the winter season is just a month or two away, but absolutely we can get past rainfall data, whether it's for a specific event, specific day, month, year period. There's plenty of rainfall climatology data out there as well, and that's where one of the last slides we said, hey, we can customize just about any weather report that you need. That falls into that category. Again, you can reach out to sales@weatherworksinc.com, or maybe a more efficient method would be to go to data, at weatherworksinc.com, and absolutely we can customize that for you.
All right, great. Thanks, Rob. That about wraps up our webinar for today. Again, feel free to reach out to our admin and sales team if you have any questions regarding account renewal or setup for the upcoming season. We will also be releasing some how-to videos to assist with account setup in the coming months. In the meantime, you may direct any questions to sales@weatherworksinc.com or reach out to Rob, or even contact us through our company line at 908-850-8600. So we want to thank you for joining us again today. We hope to see you again next month for our winter preview outlook. And again, have a wonderful afternoon. We'll see you soon.